Everybody, and welcome to our week number 5 research methods stream. I hope everyone is doing well and hanging in there. It's a nice cloudy day, which is kind of fun. Can everyone hear me and see me okay? If someone could let me know in the chat if everything is coming through clearly, that would be amazing. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Joey. And Marisol, great, perfect, thank you. So what I want to do this week, I want to take a few minutes, like usual, to give you a little bit of feedback about last week. We did have our first exam, along with talking about APA formatting, and then of course we'll look at the things that we have going on this week. Probably kind of short and sweet as we've settled into the class. We're 1/4 of the way through now at this point, but let's go ahead and go over to Canvas together, and we can take a look at everything. Last week was week number 4, and again we had kind of a lot going on in terms of having that first exam. I will say that a lot of you did absolutely fantastically on exam number 1, which made me really happy to see. There were a lot of A's. The vast majority of you looked like you had plenty of time to take the exam. Hopefully everything felt very clear and straightforward on your end, but from what I saw on my end, a lot of you seem like you understand the materials and are doing very, very well. So that makes me happy to see. I always have the same little spiel. If you've heard this before, I apologize, but I would like to encourage you to use exam number 1 as a learning opportunity, especially in this class where we're talking about conducting research and making conclusions from it, right? Let's take exam number 1 and use it. All right, so if you like your score and you're really happy with it, keep doing the same thing as we move into the 2nd, 4th of our class. If you wish you had done a little bit better, now is a wonderful time to change things up. You could try and study a little bit differently, like maybe 1 week or 1 chapter at a time as we go. You could also do the study guide. If you didn't do the study guide for this last exam, definitely do it for the next one. But kind of be critical a little bit about the things that you've done so far. Are they working for you? Do you want to change anything? Or are you going to keep your approach the same as we move into the next 4 weeks of the class? So just something to keep in the back of your mind. Again, a lot of you did really, really well. But if you're discouraged or you wish you had done a little better, now is a great time to change things up. And remember that you always have these extra credit opportunities that you can do every single week, which would help to make up for some of those points that maybe you lost. So for the most part, really nicely done on the first exam. Let's talk for just a minute about discussion number 4. This one was an interesting one. I think just about every single one of you got that scenarios 1 and 2 were plagiarism, right? I think most of us are pretty familiar with plagiarism, though it's getting a little interesting as we get more and more into like AI kind of generated stuff. We'll see what happens with all of that. But for now, 1 and 2 were definitely plagiarism. But number 3 was a little bit tricky and kind of gave some people a difficult time. So with number 3, it was not considered plagiarism. And the reason for that is you were just using the same sources that you already read 2 months ago. And some of you commented on this in your responses. So using the same sources does not constitute plagiarism. If you were to take sections of the old paper and incorporate it into your new one without citing the old one, then you would have committed self-plagiarism, which a lot of you didn't know was a thing until this week. So I'm glad that you know that now. But using just the same sources is not enough to be considered plagiarism. But submitting the same paper, of course, or parts of the same paper would definitely be an issue, but the same sources not so much. Other than that, really, really nicely done. Most of you did a beautiful job explaining what APA is and when and why it's used. And then great job. Most of you got all 3, but definitely the 3rd one gave trouble to a couple of people. So I just wanted to take a moment and kind of clarify that just using the same sources is not enough. But if obviously you'd used parts of the paper, then yes, you would have committed self-plagiarism. Which is a thing, right? So overall, again, really nicely done. A lot of you are doing a beautiful job. Nice job on the first 4th of the class. We move into week number 5 and the second 4 weeks of our class as of this week. And things are going to start picking up a little bit. So we've kind of introduced the idea of thinking critically and thinking like a scientist and introducing APA. we're going to start getting into the core of our materials starting this week. So hopefully you're feeling good as we start to enter into that. We start chapter 3, which I've broken up into 2 parts because they are very different focuses and it's a lot of information. So I thought it would be nice to take a week for each half of the chapter. So this week we start on chapter 3, part 1. It's about 11 pages, so make sure that you're reading those. Of course, you're also going to want to go through my lecture. And if you look at the lecture, we're looking a lot at the topic of what are variables, what are claims, and what are the 3 different claims in psychology, so frequency, association, and causal claims. On the Beyond the Book page, I talked a lot about correlational research, different types of correlation, positive, negative, and zero. And then this really big concept in this class, and also any psych class, and that correlation does not imply or equal causation. Just because 2 things are connected to each other doesn't mean that they cause each other. And this is something that we're going to talk a lot about this week and then kind of throughout the rest of the class. I also made a little video here that I made a few years ago, and I included it in here. It might be helpful for you, giving you some examples of how correlation and causation are different things. I think the examples in there are really helpful. And then finally, on the last page, you have the key terms from this half of the chapter that I want you to know for the exam. So if you want to do things a little bit differently, you could always consider studying just these terms this week, and then next week add the next half, and so on. And that might be something that's really helpful if you're considering changing up your tactics for the exam. So make sure that you read chapter 3, part 1 in the book. Make sure you read through the lecture, watch my lecture video I made in there, watch anything or click on any links. And then also make sure to watch the lecture video to the PowerPoint slides where I'm kind of literally going through it with you. Discussion number 5 is going to build on these topics, right? It's going to be very directly related to what we're covering. As always, you have my instructions up here at the top. As always, you're going to probably want to watch my little video that I made for you, giving you some tips and highlights and going over the prompt in a little bit more detail. I hope these are helpful. It seems like they would be, so hopefully you're taking advantage of them. But as always, make sure you think of these as little mini papers. Elaborate in your responses. It's worth 15 points, 13 for your responses to my questions, and then 2 for a classmate. And so what you're going to do here is there's a little article down here called 8 Ways That Screens Are Ruining Your Family's Life, right? And I want you to read this article. It's not overly long or difficult to read. And then you're going to answer these 4 questions related to the article about screens ruining your family's life. Number 1, I want you to summarize the article in a few sentences. Be sure to include the conclusions and finding in your summary. This is a really wonderful skill to learn, and I'm going to push it on you a little bit again this week. So read through the article. Number 1, summarize it in a few sentences, including their conclusions and findings. Number 2, thinking about the 3 types of claims that we're talking about this week. What type of claim is the author making in this article? Is it frequency, association, or causal? And is the author's claim accurate or justified? In other words, is the type of claim that they're making actually the correct type of claim according to your reading? So hint, if you're having trouble determining the type of claim for the article, think about whether the variables were just measured or were they manipulated. Are they related to each other, or can we determine that they cause each other? So think about what are the claims the article is making, what type is it, and explain. And is it the correct type, right, based on what they've done or not done in the article? Number 3, I want you to find 2 different examples in the article of a term or variable that needs to be operationalized, which means that it needs a definition in order to be successfully measured or evaluated. So for example, if I'm saying you're going to be successful if you do X, how am I defining successful, right? So you're going to find 2 different examples of terms that should have an operational definition. And then number 4, I want you to think about potential third variables and or the directionality effect. How else could a different variable or aspect of this article be possibly explained? Is there a third variable they're not considering? Is there a directionality effect that's present? All of these things should be very possible after you've done the reading and listened to the lecture. I look forward to your responses and see what you come up with. Again, really think about what they're saying versus do they have the right to make those claims. Okay, and that's my little hint for you for number 2. Also, don't forget to reply to a classmate, as always, to get those 2 very easy points. The other thing that you have this week is you do have a little self-assessment, and you'll see another one of these after our next exam. This is worth 5 points, so please do take a couple of minutes to do this. But if you click on the self-assessment, you have as much time as you need. It's not timed. And please be honest, right? This is more for you than anything. So when you're ready, you'll hit click, take the survey, and you're going to answer a few questions about how you feel like you're doing so far. I'm doing my part to learn as much as possible. On average, how much time am I spending? I consistently do the reading and turn my assignments in on time. What's your most unclear point so far? And thinking about your score on exam 1, is there anything you plan to do differently moving forward? So again, please be honest. This is for your reflection more than anything, but do take the time to do that. It's worth 5 points. And I think it's a really good opportunity to, again, reflect on what you've been doing so far and if you need to change anything up moving forward. Okay. The other thing, of course, like always, you'll have the extra credit question, which I'll give you in a moment. And I will, of course, post the recording of the live stream on here as well within a few hours. And then there's your wrap-up checklist as always. I do have a couple of reminders for you. Are there any questions or anything for me? I'll put that out there while I give you these couple of reminders. If you have any questions, now would be a wonderful time to put them in the chat. Reminder number 1, we are in week number 5, so there's an excellent chance if you subscribed for free that your 30-day subscription has expired. So if you could take a moment just to double check that you're still subscribed, or if you've never done it, you could still figure that out. I really appreciate it. A lot of you fell off last week. So if you could take a minute to figure that out or renew it, I did kind of walk you through how to do that last week if you want to go back and look for that. The other reminder that I have for you, and I'll put this here in the chat, our next Twitch live stream will be on Wednesday, September 20th at 12:30 p.m. Okay, so sticking with our normal day and time, we will be back next Wednesday at 12:30. Another opportunity to ask me questions. I'll go over some feedback from this week and, of course, go over what we have going on next week as well. Other than that, if you don't have any questions for me, let me give you the Twitch extra credit question and show you where to answer that, and then you can go from there. So this is the week number 5 Twitch extra credit question. Okay. What are 2 ways that a correlation can be portrayed or represented? What are 2 ways that we can portray or represent a correlation? So think about what are some different ways, like if you had a correlation between 2 things, what are 2 ways that you could share with me what that correlation is? So hopefully that's kind of helpful. I know that sometimes it's worded in a way that's confusing, but think about, could you share, how would you share with me if you had a correlation like in 2 different ways? All right, and so that is the question for this week. Let's go ahead and go over to Canvas, and you would answer that right here on optional Twitch extra credit number 5. Okay, delete this comment that was on here that we don't need, right? So at the top you'll hit start assignment, and that's going to bring up this text box where you can type your response and hit submit. Okay, and then you get the confetti burst and trophies. Very nice. Like my fantasy football trophy that's right on my desk. Just kidding. And this is worth 2 points. Of course, it's due by Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. So you have the whole week to work on it. If you do it early and you get it wrong, I will let you know and you can try it again. But give it a shot. Those 2 points are definitely going to add up and be helpful for you. Make sure that you get going on everything from week number 5. Don't forget to also do that little self-assessment. I know it's not worth a lot of points, but they're a very easy 5 points. And hopefully it gives you a good opportunity to kind of reflect on what you're doing so far. I think that is everything that I wanted to share with you today. Any questions, comments, thoughts, or anything, I will hang out for a little bit. If you do have any, I'm happy to put them in the chat and I'm happy to answer them for you. Otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful week, that you're hanging in there. Enjoy. It looks like we're going to have a little bit cooler weather coming up, which is so nice. I'm so grateful. But have a wonderful week, everyone. I'm going to minimize my video, but I will hang out for a little bit. If you do have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I will hope to see you on Wednesday next week for our week number 6 Twitch live stream. Thank you again for those of you joining me live. And remember, if you watch this as a recording and you're subscribed, you can still answer the question to get that extra credit. Thank you as well. Thank you so much for being on here. I appreciate it. Thank you. Bye. Have a wonderful week. And I am still here if you do have any questions. Or you can, of course, always email me if you think of something later on.